The Galactic Council had made many mistakes in its 12,000-year history, but inviting humans to participate in the Universal Student Exchange Program would later be recorded as mistake number 1743. More specifically, the mistake was allowing the human institution known as Sydney University to select their representative. They sent Jiggy. Alex Chen, a quiet engineering student from Beijing, had been the logical choice. He was studious, diplomatic, and had actually read the 70-page Cultural Sensitivity Handbook. The council had reviewed his application with satisfaction, pleased that humanity was taking this historic opportunity seriously. What they didn't know was that Jiggy Martinez had switched their name badges at the spaceport. "Oi, this gravity's absolute rubbish," Jiggy announced the moment she stepped off the transport onto station, her Australian accent echoing through the crystalline halls. The Zentari Welcoming Committee, a species known for their rigid adherence to protocol, visibly flinched. Ambassador Thexler, whose translucent blue skin rippled with what the handbook described as diplomatic concern, approached with all four arms extended in the traditional greeting. "Welcome, honored student Alex Chen. We hope your journey was—" "Yeah, now I'm actually Jiggy," she interrupted, dropping her singular backpack on the polished floor with a thud that shouldn't have been possible in the station's reduced gravity. "Alex is probably halfway to Mars by now. Bit of a mix-up at the gate, yeah." The ambassador's translator implant struggled with her idioms. 3 of his eyes blinked in succession, a sign of extreme confusion in Zentari physiology. But the paperwork, the background checks. "Beauty mate, now where's the food court? I'm absolutely starving. They didn't have any decent Tim Tams on that tin can you call a shuttle." This was how the Galactic Council discovered that humans, unlike every other species in the known universe, did not always follow established procedures. By the end of week 1, Jiggy had accumulated 14 citations for conduct unbecoming of an exchange participant. She had attempted to pat a Quillian diplomat, not realizing their spines were venomous. Referred to the station commander as Big Guy, the commander was a gaseous entity. Brought what she called Vegemite into the communal dining area, causing an evacuation when other species detected what their sensors flagged as a potential bioweapon. Started an underground gambling ring teaching aliens a card game called Shithead. The real Alex Chen, who had indeed been mistakenly sent to the Mars agricultural colony, kept sending increasingly frantic messages that were systematically ignored by the bureaucratic machine of both Earth and galactic governments. It was during week 2 that things became interesting. The Crixton Sovereignty, a militant species that had been testing the Council's patience for decades, sent an unmarked warship into neutral space near Station Kepler 442. They had been looking for any excuse to demonstrate their military superiority, and the presence of the primitive human seemed like the perfect opportunity. Captain Zarkoth, whose exoskeleton bore the scars of 30 conquered worlds, materialized in the station's central plaza with 24 armed soldiers. The station's shields had been bypassed, a technological feat that should have been impossible. "This station is now under Crixton control," Zarkoth announced, his voice modulated through a helmet that made him sound like grinding metal. "All species will submit to biological scanning for our archives. Resistance will result in immediate vaporization." The plaza, which had been filled with students and faculty from across the galaxy, fell into terrified silence. Ambassador Thexler's skin turned a pale shade of fear gray. The Crixton were known for their brutality, and their weapons technology was centuries ahead of the Council's defensive capabilities. That's when Jiggy pushed through the crowd. "Yeah, nah, I don't reckon that's gonna work for me, mate," she said, walking straight up to the 7-foot-tall armored warrior. Zarkoth tilted his head, a gesture that his species used to examine particularly interesting prey. "You dare address me, human. Your species isn't even classified as level 2 on the Kardashev scale." "Don't know what that is, but I do know you're being a bit of a dickhead right now," Jiggy replied, hands on her hips. "We're trying to study here, yeah, so why don't you and your mates piss off back to whatever rock you crawled out from?" The translator implants around the plaza struggled with her vocabulary. Several species assumed she must be using some sort of advanced psychological warfare technique, speaking in code that would trigger a hidden defense system. She wasn't. Zarkoth raised his plasma rifle. "You have 10 seconds to beg for your life, primitive." Jiggy's eyes narrowed. "Primitive, mate, I've survived Schooley's week on the Gold Coast. I've wrestled crocs in the top end. I once drank a bottle of Bundy rum and fought a kangaroo at a house party in Canberra. She stepped closer, somehow making the armored warrior take a step back. You reckon you scare me. What happened next would be studied in xenopsychology courses for generations. Jiggy reached into her backpack, which had somehow passed through 17 different security checkpoints, and pulled out a clear container. Inside it, something moved, something with 8 legs and a distinctly aggressive posture. This, she announced, holding it up, is a Sydney funnel-web spider, one of the most venomous little bastards on Earth. Found him in my shower last month, kept him as a pet. His name's Bruce. The Crixton soldiers' tactical readouts went haywire. Their threat assessment systems, calibrated for weapons and explosives, had no framework for analyzing biological horrors that humans kept as pets. Your planet has evolved predators that you maintain as companions. Zarkoth's voice had lost its confidence. Oh, Bruce ain't a predator, mate. He's just a spider. You should see the snakes, or the jellyfish, or the octopi. Actually, scratch that. The octopi are brilliant, smart as anything. She unscrewed the lid slightly. Wanna hold Bruce? The Crixton captain took 3 steps backward, his rifle forgotten. What kind of death world produced your species? Death world, Jiggy laughed. Nah, we just call it Australia. It's gorgeous, mate. Bit hot. Everything wants to kill you, but the beaches are beautiful. Round the plaza, other students were beginning to access Earth's publicly available databases. What they found contradicted everything they thought they knew about habitable worlds. Earth wasn't just harsh, it was a catalog of evolutionary nightmares. Storms that could level cities, temperature variations that would kill most galactic species, an atmosphere with enough oxygen to be considered highly flammable by standard measures, and a gravity well that was classified as heavy by council standards. And humans called it home. Some of them, like Jiggy, specifically chose to live in the parts that were even worse. A Zentari xenobiologist pulled up footage of something called a saltwater crocodile. Another found documentation of box jellyfish. A third discovered humans had a sport called rugby, where they deliberately crashed into each other at high speeds for entertainment. Your species is insane, Zarkoth whispered, his tactical computer recommending immediate retreat. Now we're just built different, yeah. Jiggy sealed Bruce back in his container. Now, you gonna leave peaceful like, or do I need to tell you about drop bears? The Crixton warship departed 17 minutes later, without scanning a single being. Captain Zarkoth filed a report recommending that Earth be classified as a do not engage world, citing psychological warfare capabilities beyond current understanding. The Galactic Council, meanwhile, faced a dilemma. Jiggy had technically violated 47 different station regulations by bringing an unregistered life form aboard, but she had also single-handedly prevented what could have been a hostage situation lasting months. Ambassador Thexler found her in the cafeteria that evening, eating something she'd synthesized that the food printer had labeled as possibly toxic. Ms. Martinez, he began carefully, we need to discuss your continued presence on this station. Jiggy looked up from her meat pie. Look, if this is about Bruce, he's harmless as long as you don't stick your fingers where they don't belong. It's not about Bruce. The ambassador's skin rippled through several colors, settling on confused purple. You've created a diplomatic incident. You've violated numerous protocols. You've taught 73 students a gambling game that apparently causes psychological addiction in Dravalian physiology. Yeah, but I also made the scary bug aliens leave, yeah. Yes, which is why, he pulled out a data pad. The Council wants to offer you a position. A position? Human Galactic Cultural Liaison. Apparently, we've realized we know nothing about your species' psychology, survival capabilities, or decision-making processes. We need someone to translate. Jiggy grinned. Does it pay? Handsomely. Can I bring Bruce? Ambassador Thexler's skin cycled through every color in the Zentari emotional spectrum before settling on resigned beige. Yes, you can bring Bruce. Beauty, I'll take it. As she shook his hand, another human custom the ambassador was learning to tolerate, he had one final question. Ms. Martinez, what would you have done if Captain Zarkoth hadn't retreated? Jiggy's smile turned slightly feral. Mate, I still had a whole tube of Vegemite in my bag that would have cleared the station in about 30 seconds. The ambassador decided he didn't want to know more. Back on Earth, Alex Chen finally made contact with Sydney University, explaining the mix-up. They told him not to worry, that Jiggy had everything under control. He resigned himself to spending the semester farming hydroponic lettuce on Mars. Somewhere on station Kepler 442, Jiggy was teaching a Quillian princess how to play two-up, while Bruce watched from his container, and the Galactic Council was learning a valuable lesson. Never underestimate a species that evolved in a place where the wildlife actively tried to murder them. They called it Australia. The galaxy would never be the same.